The boss of the world's most valuable bank says something is fundamentally wrong with America. The head of JP Morgan Chase, Jamie Dimon, released his annual shareholder letter on Tuesday, hinting at the Trump administration. Now, it's all a bit odd when you consider that Trump actually wants to cut regulations for banks. You'd think they'd be best buddies. Andre-Pierre du Plessis explains.
As a result of the 2008 global financial crisis, Barack Obama called for a sweeping overhaul of the US financial regulatory system. The proposal was called the Dodd-Frank Act, a series of laws meant, among other things, to protect the public from banks growing too big and being bailed out with their tax dollars. But since being signed into law in 2010, Wall Street has been fighting back. Bankers say the reforms are an overreaction to the collapse of US banks like Lehman Brothers. Much of the positive US market response to Donald Trump's election victory was on his promise to end these reforms. 5 months later, he hasn't touched it. But when he met with executives on Tuesday, he once again promised change.
We are absolutely destroying these horrible regulations that have been placed on your heads over not 8 years, over the last 20 and 25 years. You have regulations that are horrendous. Dodd-Frank is an example of what we're working on, and we're working on it right now. We're going to be coming out with some very strong, not far beyond recommendations. We're going to be doing things that are going to be very good for the banking industry.
Right after Trump's address, the CEO of America's biggest bank released his annual shareholder letter, saying getting rid of Dodd-Frank is not the best way forward.
So the system's better. Dodd-Frank is partially responsible. And, you know, none of us can possibly say you can't make things a little bit better. I'm not in favor of throwing it out and starting from ground zero, and a lot of good work was done.
Trump's claim that bank profits are lower as a result of Dodd-Frank is in fact false. American banks have doubled their profits since the global financial crisis of 2009. Dimon's shareholder letter is perhaps the business world's second most widely read chairman's letter after Warren Buffett's, which typically celebrates his company's success. But unlike previous years, America's most powerful banker is more downbeat about his country than previously. And although his views differ from those of Trump's, Dimon's opinions are important to Trump, since he sits on the US President's Business Council of 16 top executives. Wall Street is optimistic that, regardless of advice, Trump will soon act to change how banks are regulated. But financial markets are losing their patience with a president they see as slow to act. Andre-Pierre du Plessis, TRT World.
Well, our editor-at-large, Craig Copetas, joins us now from Paris. Craig, Dodd-Frank was brought in for a very good reason. We've discussed a little bit about it, but tell us why it's so important.
Well, you must remember 2007, the financial crisis. That was the worst fiscal event since the Great Depression, a time when people were throwing themselves out of buildings back in the late 20s. And the fiscal crisis of 06, 07 created that same motif. It was awful. So two U.S. legislators, Dodd and Frank, got together with the help of a Democratic president, Obama, to put together this law. Now, what this law is essentially a series of 243 rules that critics say gave too much power to the government to control the American economy. Now, the power of the critics' statement was intensified because a number of U.S. states actually attempted to take Dodd-Frank to the Supreme Court, declare it unconstitutional because it gave the federal government too much power. It never made it there.
What's interesting...
So these...
No, yeah, look, I wanted to ask you about Jamie Dimon's attitude. You know, he's the one of the kings of Wall Street, and he's at odds with the King of New York and now the President of the United States. How does that happen? Is he a banker with a conscience, or are we... Come on.
No. He would like to harpoon Dodd-Frank as much as Donald Trump does. The banks right now, as Dimon tells it, have too much capital. Now, what they want to do, and I got to go into the weeds here, boys and girls, so follow this. What Dimon wants to do is increase the amount of borrowed money a bank can use in relation to its overall assets. That's what triggered the financial crisis. They lent out too much money, people didn't have it to pay back. So what Dimon wants to do and Trump wants to do is pare this back down to give more control to the banks and allow the banks to operate abroad under international rules and not exclusively U.S. rules, which are more restrictive.
Okay, Craig Copetas, thank you for clearing that up. Appreciate it.